I'm using a number of processes to make my work. Some of them are really old, for example, casting ceramics, but I'm combining that with really new technologies and kind of digital methods of making objects through processes like 3D printing. So ceramics is my background, but when I started working with digital technology, that has kind of entered my practice in a number of ways. For example, there's pieces in this installation that are 3D prints, but more often I'm 3D printing models that I'm then casting and taking through ceramic processes. You know, ceramics is such a broad field. There's so many variations of clays. You can use so many processes within that one discipline. And I think it took me a while to find one that I was really interested in. And it was really when I discovered this material that I use now. It's a material called Parian porcelain. And I discovered it kind of walking through the ceramic galleries of the V&A when I was doing my first year of my MA. And I really enjoyed the kind of material illusion in that particular type of clay. You know, it was actually developed in the 18th century as a way of imitating Parian marble, as a kind of middle-class taste for these kind of forms was really rampant. You know, people really wanted them in their homes. And that kind of led me on a path to work with kind of playful materials and materials behaving in ways that we might not expect. That has led to the introduction of other materials into the work, like silicone, like this. So the main body of this piece is Parian porcelain, and then I've added silicone drapery on top of that. There's a kind of illusory function there where you become unsure of what material is what. It's a way of, I use those kind of mechanisms as a way of challenging and questioning what we think we know and what we think we understand about the world around us. My motivations and my concerns are in some ways quite traditional. You know, I'm very interested in materials. I'm really focused on processes and things like scale, color, form, the body. You know, I think these are all really familiar things that sculptors have been interested in throughout history. But then there's a whole other set of references that creep into my work that are much more of the present day from now. Things like digital communication, social media platforms, and the kind of strangeness associated with the way we're living our lives increasingly through these systems and mechanisms. I think the focus on display that has emerged in my work, it has a lot to do with kind of controlling how the sculptural forms that I'm making are experienced by viewers. It's also a way of grouping collections of objects. There's a definite connection to display, you know, and part of that comes from the thematic content in my work, where I've been exploring these ideas of social platforms, and what we show and what we hide in those contexts is really relevant. So that has led to a practice of thinking about staging, thinking about composing in some ways. That combination of old and new within my work, it's representative of a kind of hybrid way of combining things that appears time and time again within the work. You know, often my sculptures appear to be kind of bodies turning into objects, or objects turning into bodies. I think with this installation in particular, you then also have kind of floors and walls turning into exhibition furniture and vice versa. This show, it features a group of 6 sculptures that I've made over the last 8 years. And it's something that I really like to do, is to pull forms from different time periods and show them in new groupings and collections. Because when I do that, I have the strongest sense of these objects coming from another world or being of another realm. So when I heard the title of the show was Worlds of Their Own, I knew that was the approach that I wanted to take. I think there's a strong sense that's been developing for some time of this being a kind of suggested alternative. You know, what if we do things differently? What if in our world things were less fixed and less rigid? So I'm hoping it's a kind of piece that encourages us to think about what changing context does to these kind of forms, and maybe also what changing context does to us.